Coming up on The World Today. At least 54 people killed as trailer carrying Central American migrants overturns in Mexico. U.S. wins appeal over extradition of Wikileaks founder Julian Assange. Plus, United Nations says more than 13,000 flees Chad to escape violence in Cameroon. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shubawale. We begin with devastating news in Mexico, where authorities say at least 54 people have been killed and scores more injured after the truck they were being transported in crashed. More than 150 people, said to be migrants from Central America, were crammed into the truck's trailer when it rolled in southern Mexico. The accident is one of the deadliest involving migrants in the country in decades and follows the death of 13 migrants in a car accident on the U.S. border in March.
The horrific accident occurred in the southern Mexican state of Chiapas after a large trailer carrying migrants overturned on a dangerous curve. At least 54 people, most of them migrants from Central America, have been confirmed dead. Graphic images show victims, including children, strewn across the road next to the overturned truck. Authorities say more than 150 people were crammed into the vehicle.
Fortunately, the reaction from all institutions, Red Cross, firefighters, civil protection, was really fast. We hope that the about 45 people injured and taken to various hospitals will be able to recover.
This is one of the worst accidents to befall migrants risking their lives to reach the United States. Migrants fleeing poverty and violence in Central America typically trek through Mexico to reach the U.S. border. Many pay smugglers who illegally transport them in crowded and dangerous trucks on the long journey. At least 3,575 deaths have been documented on the United States-Mexico border since 2014, according to the International Organization for Migration, with 650 people killed attempting to cross the U.S. border this year alone, the highest number since the agency began documenting deaths in 2014.
The United States government has won an appeal at Britain's High Court over the extradition of Wikileaks founder Julian Assange. This ruling, which overturns an earlier decision, means 50-year-old Assange may now be closer to being sent from London's high-security Belmarsh prison to the United States. Mr. Assange is wanted in the U.S. over the publication of thousands of classified documents in 2010 and 2011. The U.S. won its appeal against a January UK court ruling that he could not be extradited due to concerns over his mental health. Judges were reassured by U.S. promises to reduce the risk of suicide. His fiancée says they intend to appeal.
How can these courts approve an extradition request under these conditions? How can they accept an extradition to the country that plotted to kill Julian, that plotted to kill a publisher because of what he published? This goes to the fundamentals of press freedom and of democracy. We will fight. Every generation has an epic fight to fight, and this is ours.
Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Bird, joins us now for more on this. Maria, you know, it's a win for the United States, well, isn't it? It seems there is nothing in law to stop the UK sending Assange to America. What reactions is this getting in the country?
Now, the U.S., obviously, Wikileaks was a very big issue during that period of time, during the Obama administration. But we know that President Obama did not force the extradition of that and did not bring the charges. Really, the Trump administration, which really pushed forward with that. And so I think this is not necessarily looked at as a win. This is to address 18 charges that have been brought forth. Wikileaks had a major impact and a detrimental impact on the U.S. So I don't know if it's a win more so as much as it is a time for the U.S. to be able to address the issue. The U.S. has obviously said that they will be watching him closely to ensure as much as they can that there is no suicide attempts on that as he's extradited into the U.S. once he does reach the U.S. And is in prison here. And so I think the U.S. is not looking for this to be something where this puts his life in danger while he's under the U.S. At the time. But this is something that I think the U.S. is hoping that can be brought to some sort of justice.
So what are authorities saying is likely to happen next with this case?
Well, once he reaches the U.S., they will then, be bringing him to court. They will be addressing those 18 charges, and they will really be able to peel back the onion. I think the U.S. is not only looking for the extradition to convict or to bring some sort of a justice just for Julian. I think the real issue is about where there are others involved. How can we ensure that something like this does not occur again? And what is the full story behind it?
Okay, and Maria, away from the Assange case to the devastating news from Mexico, that's the truck crash with at least 54 people said to be dead. What more are you hearing from there at this point?
Well, at this time, obviously they're under investigation. They are at the scene trying to exactly see what occurred. We know that when you talk about 54 people, this was quite a catastrophe. And so
Well, it does seem we are having some connection issues with our correspondent. We will try and reconnect. But in the meantime, let's take a look at some other stories. Russian President Vladimir Putin has been hardening his rhetoric over the situation in Ukraine, saying the war in the country's east looks like genocide. Russian-backed rebels have been fighting Ukrainian troops there since 2014, and tensions have been growing as Russia amasses troops on the border. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden discussed recent talks with Mr. Putin in a call to his Ukrainian counterpart. There are fears that Russia is planning to invade Ukraine, which Russia denies. Well, let's head back to Maria now. Maria, we were talking about the migrants crisis, and I just want to ask, it's interesting that just on Monday, the Biden administration relaunched the controversial border policy known as Remain in Mexico. But this hasn't stopped people from embarking on this dangerous journey to the United States in the past, has it? We do apologize for the connection issues. Moving on, hopefully the connection will be better. Nicaragua has become the latest country to cut diplomatic ties with Taiwan in favor of China. Taiwan said it was deeply saddened, adding that the country had disregarded their many years of friendship. The decision was praised by China, which demands that any country that wants diplomatic relations with it must cut existing ties with Taiwan. It comes as the U.S. State Department has called for democracies to expand engagement with Taiwan. Beijing sees Taiwan as a breakaway province to be reunified with the mainland one day. However, Taiwan sees itself as a democratically governed independent country, though it has never formally declared independence from the mainland. Taiwan's list of international allies has dwindled from 21 down to 14 since President Tsai Ing-wen took office in May 2016. The United Nations Human Rights Office has said that Myanmar's military is committing grave violations, including killing 11 people and setting fire to their bodies. It comes as U.S. State Department spokesperson says that the United States is outraged by the reports that Myanmar's soldiers have rounded up and killed 11 people in the region.
We have, of course, similarly identified patterns of arbitrary detention and ill treatment in institutions, coercive labor practices, and an erosion of social and cultural rights in general. And we reiterate the need for an independent and comprehensive assessment of the human rights situation in Xinjiang. And we are finalizing our own assessment of the available information on allegations of serious human rights violations.
Now, Uruguayans living in Istanbul have welcomed a finding by an unofficial tribunal of lawyers and campaigners which accused Chinese President Xi Jinping over the treatment of Uruguayans and members of other minorities in the Xinjiang region. The tribunal, which is headed by British lawyer Geoffrey Nice but has no powers of sanctions or enforcement, accused President Xi of what it said was genocide, crimes against humanity and torture. China has dismissed the tribunal as farce being used by its enemies to spread lies.
I just expecting whole world, international arena, international government stand up with people. Not only not only said boycott or some said there is a genocide. The Uyghur people just expecting true, some act on the against the Chinese government. Do genocide on Uyghur people. I just expecting that Chinese government stop the genocide and the international arena do some act.
Now, more than 30,000 people in northern Cameroon have fled to Chad after the violence at the weekend that killed at least 22 people. That's according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. Violence broke out in the border village of Ulumsa on Sunday in a dispute between herders, fishermen and farmers over dwindling water resources. Suspected fighters of the Allied Democratic Forces have killed 16 people in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo in attacks that took place as a joint operation by Congolese and Ugandan forces against the armed group is currently underway. Local officials say the attacks took place late on Wednesday in the rural commune of Mangina and nearby Masiriko in the DRC's North Kivu province. Freddie Mbayayi, deputy mayor of Mangina, says an unknown number of people had also been kidnapped during the attack. Resident Pelka Josephat says 4 family members had been abducted as people were being killed with machetes. And still to come on the program. Nobel Peace Prize winners demand protection for journalists. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. The River Aga in Spain's northern region of Navarre broke its banks in the town of Vilava today, flooding streets and leaving many homes submerged underwater with only their rooftops visible. Local media reports regional authorities are still quantifying the damage in the area caused by Storm Barra, adding the floods generated by the River Aga are the worst in 20 years. One person is said to have died. The storm arrived in Spain on Wednesday, causing havoc in northern parts of the country, bringing stormy weather and snow. Spain's weather agency has put 12 regions on a weather alert. Well, the situation in France isn't any better as streets turned into rivers in Bayonne city as heavy rain hit southwestern area of the country. Video uploaded on social media showed the river overflowing onto the streets of the city, prompting the authorities to close the roads and forcing residents to walk in knee-high waters. Meteorological Service Mateo Francis issued a red alert for flood risk in the Department of Pyrenees Atlantics, together with an orange alert for rain and risk of avalanche in the rest of the region. Some updates from the COVID-19 pandemic now. As South Africa grapples with managing a surge in COVID positivity, the Health Department has given the go-ahead for 12 to 17-year-olds to receive their second doses of the Pfizer vaccine. This has to be 6 months after the first was taken. Also, the South African Health Products Regulatory Agency has approved for adults who have been fully Pfizer vaccinated to receive a booster shot. More information is still expected on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Briefing the nation today, Health Minister Dr. Joe Fowler says vaccines remain the best line of defense, even against the Omicron variant, which seems more transmissible but with less severe sickness. Here's more on this and other developments from around the world on our COVID-19 Global Update.
South African scientists say they see no sign that the Omicron coronavirus variant is causing more severe illness than its predecessors.
In terms of the symptoms, we have from reports from various doctors, we don't have any information that suggests that this variant causes different symptoms from other variants. Anecdotal information from doctors have reported that patients present with scratchy throat, cough, fever, diarrhea, and vomiting. Preliminary evidence suggests that there may be an increased risk of reinfection with this variant. People who have had previous COVID could become infected more easily with this variant as compared to the previous variants of concern.
The Health Department has also given the go-ahead for 12 to 17-year-olds to receive the second doses of the Pfizer vaccine.
So as things stand, the vaccines are showing to be really still very strong in protecting against severe disease. As it has been with the previous variants, it shows what the figures from the numbers from hospitals does show that indeed those who are vaccinated are much better protected even against this.
Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the country will begin administering vaccines for children aged 5 to 11 from January the 10th, 2022.
And now we have taken the decision, based on the best possible medical advice through the TGA, that we'll be extending that vaccination program to 5 to 11-year-olds and giving parents the choice. As a parent, there are no more important decisions that you make than those you make about the health and well-being of your children. And we want to make sure that we have been one of the first countries in North America, in the United States and Canada, having observed their experience and looked at their results to be able to move to vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds.
South Korea says it'll further cut the interval for coronavirus booster vaccines for all adults from 4 to 5 months to 3, as it struggles to fight record levels of infections amidst concerns over the Omicron variant. The move came 3 weeks after the government reduced the booster gap for people aged 60 and older and primary groups to 4 months from 6. South Korea has fully vaccinated almost 94% of its adults so far, and more than 31% of some 17 million eligible for a booster shot have received it. Across France, pharmacies say they are facing a shortage of COVID tests as cases rise. Official data shows nearly 5.3 million PCR and antigenic tests were carried out from November 29th to December the 5th, the highest number in months, and a 31% increase on the previous week, which itself was about 38% higher than the week before. And finally, China's National Medical Products Administration has approved the country's first medical treatment therapy using a newly developed drug that specifically targets the coronavirus-causing highly contagious disease of COVID-19. The drug uses a cocktail of 2 antibodies developed by selecting 2 monoclonal antibodies that inhibit the virus from infecting healthy cells. The results of multiple clinical trials of this therapy have showed an 80% efficacy in cutting the rates of hospitalization and deaths.
Now, the Ghanaian government says from midnight on Sunday, all visitors to the country need to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 before being allowed to enter the country. A statement from the country's health service says Ghanaians who intend to return to the country in the next fortnight are exempted but will be vaccinated upon arrival. The statement adds that all Ghanaians traveling out of the country are also to be fully vaccinated. The order is part of measures to help control the spread of the Omicron variant of COVID-19. The Health Service statement says that most cases of the variant in the country were from people who had arrived at the international airport in Accra, and the majority of those people had been unvaccinated. Ghana has recorded just over 130,000 cases of coronavirus in total and 1,200 deaths. And I'll put it under ultraviolet light. And if this happens, that means COVID-19 is present. Well, this is a new technology developed by Japanese scientists. Face mask filters are coated in ostrich antibodies and will glow around the nose and mouth area when exposed to ultraviolet light if COVID-19 is detected. A team at the Kyoto University came up with the idea after previous research showed the birds have strong resistance to disease. The university's president hopes the technology will help reduce asymptomatic transmission. In a small study, test subjects wore the ostrich antibody mask filters for 8 hours. They were then removed, sprayed with a chemical, and tested under ultraviolet light. Now the team hopes to go one step further and develop the masks so they will automatically glow without special lighting once the virus is detected. And now the 2 journalists who shared this year's Nobel Peace Prize have received their awards during a pomp-filled ceremony in Norway, where both warned that the world needs independent reporting to counter the power of authoritarian governments. Maria Ressa of the Philippines and fellow laureate Dmitry Muratov of Russia gave their Nobel lectures at Oslo City Hall today. The Norwegian Nobel Committee awarded them the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize for their separate fights for freedom of expression in countries where reporters have faced persistent attacks, harassment, and killings.
Our greatest need today is to transform that hate and violence, the toxic sludge that's coursing through our information ecosystem, prioritized by American internet companies that make more money by spreading that hate and triggering the worst in us. For the US, reform or revoke Section 230, the law that treats social media platforms like utilities. It's not a comprehensive solution, but it gets the ball rolling.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Shubowale.